Which, let's see, make sure that my screens share correctly. Um, so what are you?
I will introduce the webinar, introduce
Okay,
you, and then
okay.
turn it over to you.
All righty, that sounds perfect.
And then we'll you do your keynote, and then we'll have a discussion right after between
Perfect.
you and the moderators, as well
Yeah.
as the audience. So welcome everybody. We're thrilled to have you here. I am Dina Refke. I'm director of the Non-Traditional Employment and Training Program, which is administered by the Center for Women in Government and Civil Society. We are part of the University at Albany, State University of New York. NET provides services to all Perkins grantees in New York State to help them recruit and retain students to gender non-traditional employment and fields of study. We are extremely fortunate to have our distinguished speaker today, Kristen Austin, Dr. Kristen Austin, and who will take the floor very soon. The webinar today is about diversifying technology. The webinar is titled Diversifying Technology Toward an Inclusive Field of Study. So we all know that technology remains a male-dominated field, and women are underrepresented in various roles, such as software development, engineering, and in leadership positions. Estimates say that women make up 26% of tech occupations and only 5% of leadership roles. And so it's not surprising that women only earn 16% of the degrees in computer and information science.
Mhm.
So many scholars have agreed that because of the historical exclusion of women from these fields, there are critical biases and stereotypes that really um, serve as adverse factors influencing women's entry and persistence in these occupations. Also, the literature cites a number of features that STEM occupations or STEM cultures in general face that may have also negative effects on individuals who are not part of the dominant groups,
Mhm.
such as women. So some of these features are the use of hierarchical teaching models that devalue the prior knowledge and experiences of students, the privileging of STEM majors and the treatment of STEM as superior to other fields, the devaluing of the diverse ways of learning, and the treatment of STEM or technology in this case as universal truth. So when you think about it this way, it becomes a technical field where the experiences of non-dominant identities are irrelevant and treated as lying outside of the realm of STEM. And so also there is a culture that perhaps glosses over social inequalities and legitimizes social injustices, curriculum that does not really recognize or perhaps marginalizes the experiences of minoritized groups, and of course, stereotyping and stereotypes threats that act as negative factors which negatively affect performance and resistance of non-dominant groups. So we're talking about two dimensions here: diversifying the curriculum and diversifying the pedagogies that we teach. So what we teach and how we teach it. And to help us really make sense of all of this is Dr. Kristen Austin, who is Vice President of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access to Rewriting the Code. So Dr. Austin has been working for 20 plus years on this work and brings an enormous experience in this field of catalyzing individuals and structures to question who is at the table, who is missing from the table, for whom the table was built, and who is unaware the table exists. Awesome, awesome questions that we grapple with all the time, and whose answers really would help us um, solve that problem of recruitment and retention to the technology field. Dr. Austin is committed to disrupting gender and racial inequity in tech by centering the strengths and experiences of non-dominant members of our communities. In addition to the focused programming, she also works with industry partners to welcome and retrain the next generation of diverse tech talent. And so, without any further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Kristen Austin. Awesome to have you here, Dr. Austin. Please take it away.
Well, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be joining you all. I'd love to connect with the SUNY community at any opportunity that I can. So I'm going to share. Very excited about this topic. Okay, so Dina, I can still see you. Is it my correct title slide?
Perfect, Dr. Austin.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, I'm really excited to spend some time with you all. I want to start at a really high level, talking about some of the things that are actually obvious to us, but then doing a deeper dive to uncover, kind of extrapolate, and even perform some surgery and then reunification of some tools and tactics that can work. So some of this information is going to be really common to you all, and then some of it you might think, I hadn't thought of that. And it's a really low hanging, very accessible intervention that we can apply to make technology more diverse, more inclusive. So I am a person of simplicity. I have ADHD, and it's actually something that I'm really proud of. I'm an adult woman with ADHD. And so I like to structure and organize things to make it easiest for me. And then I hope that it benefits you all as well. So how I've structured our time together today is to talk about what do we know, which I actually in the intro, Dina went over so many things that we do know, but it's important to really confront and name those problems that exist. So what do we know? What are we learning or unlearning? What do we still need to know? And then once we have that basket of knowledge, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? What are we going to change, shift, stop, pause, repeat, continue? What are we going to take action on? So that's how I'm going to structure our time. And then I'm hoping that you all have some really great questions or topics or themes that come up that you'd like to double tap on that we can do together. So first, what do we know? We know that things are problematic. We know that women and minoritized genders are underrepresented in the technical industry, in technical careers, and in technical fields overall. We know this. We know they are underrepresented in quantity, in volume, in all the things. What we also know is that in the US, women make up less than 28% of STEM professors, and that's at all levels. So that's everything from part-time adjunct to full tenure professors. Like just double tapping on the all levels piece is what really amplifies the problem here, 28%. And to make that even worse is that women earn 40% of STEM PhDs. So women are earning 40% of the terminal degrees in STEM, but only less than 28% are actually in academe. So actually creating those role modeled experiences and shaping pedagogy and shaping research. Well, I shouldn't say shaping research because the research is happening in other careers in STEM. And then when we look at students, this is really painful to digest, but students of all genders are 81% less likely to have a woman identifying STEM professor during their collegiate tenure. I have been a professor for nine school years, 9 academic years, I guess 10 10 starting in the spring. And every year, and I adjunct. I've full time. I've been a full time instructor, but then I've also adjuncted. Right now, I'm just adjuncting, and still every year, I still have a student that will say, and I always ask, "Am I the first Black professor you have ever had?" And then I take it to, "Am I the first Black woman professor you have ever had?" And then I can get even deeper. Am I the first Black woman learning disabled or neurodivergent? Because I'm very open about these criteria. So I know that they may have had these identities in their academic career, but maybe haven't been told that. But I make sure to put those things front and center because I teach graduate students. So if a student is making it to the graduate level and I'm the first Black professor they've ever had, that means they've gone through a minimum of 4 years of instruction, typically more, but a minimum of 4 years of academic instruction at the collegiate level, never having had a Black professor, male or female, or women, male identifying or woman identifying. So, and then lastly, only 15% of tenured track engineering faculty are women. And then we drop down a percentage point when we narrow that to computer science. So obviously we have the hardwares as well, but looking at software engineering, computer science, only 14%. And that is such a small number. Again, coupling it with the statistic above about the likelihood of even coming into contact with said professor. So when we know those things, when we know that landscape and we know who is on the campuses providing the instruction and setting the tone and the expectation for what the tech industry is, what that ends up meaning is that we're graduating less women in tech, which means they're entering the workforce and the marketplace and industry at a much lower rate. And that's still to the point that Dina mentioned when we started. 26% women are occupying, filling about 26% of the roles in the technical workforce. But then it's not enough just to be in the workforce. We need women at the decision-making power level, and only 12% then are holding decision-making power, influential power. It's so important and so problematic. And then want to just take a moment and look at race as well, because gender in and of itself, women are underrepresented as an entire gender. But then when we really tease out what that looks like from a racial demographic, is even more problematic. So you see the numbers here of white men, white women, Asian men, Asian women, Black men, Black women, and Latinx men and Latinas. So just taking that gender as an underrepresented demographic and then pulling out yet another slice of what's already a very slim slice of pie. We need to wrap our minds around this. And then finally, what else we know is that women are far more likely than male identifying individuals to be funneled into these three disciplines: education, nursing, and medicine. So medicine is in there, and liberal arts programs. And obviously, we want women in all genders in all of these areas, because we could do another presentation about the dire need for male educators, men educators. Absolutely. The issue is that we are systemically funneling careers based on gender. So what does that cost women as a demographic, as a society? What does it cost us as a society? Well, in education, some of the inequitable barriers might be the GPA requirement. A lot of times, I know in Pennsylvania, I don't actually, I remember the state of New York having even stricter requirements than Pennsylvania Department of Education. But the requirement to earn credentials as an educator, the GPA requirement in PA was a 3.2. And I'm not saying that that's not unattainable or it's not something that someone should strive for, but historically speaking, due to a variety of barriers that all of you are aware of, sometimes Black and brown students are not academically performing at the same level as their white peers. So while they may be an incredible educator, maybe they're just shy of that 3.2, and that will keep them out of that major. There's also rigorous testing that has to take place, and that testing is costly. For nursing, same thing, high GPA requirements, which again, I'm not criticizing, because if you are participating in my medical care, yes, I want you to know the most of all the things. But it just, these fields have different barriers, potential barriers that might keep BLNA populations to be less represented, might keep people that keep people in a position where they're qualified, but because of these very, very gray barriers, they're not able to cross that line into career success. And then liberal arts work, women are constantly funneled into liberal arts work, and it's meaningful and we need it. But liberal arts work does not often, not always, but does not often come with the same generational wealth building potential that tech does. So that's what we know. We know those things. What are we learning? Right now is a scary time to be in tech. We want to name that. We want to acknowledge that. We don't want to sugarcoat it or hide it. That would make us very inauthentic. And Gen Z is nothing if not inauthentic. Gen Z wants the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And they can see the truth. They can read. They can read and absorb social media and what is happening in the technical industry. Although the technical industry is experiencing layoffs at a far higher rate than any other industry at present, it is technically, pun intended, still exploding. The job market, the career opportunities, and the wealth building opportunities still exist. And at this point in our economic system, there's not any work industry that is not experiencing layoffs. Education is experiencing layoffs. The business sector, finance sector, medicine, specialized medicine tends to be holding pretty strong, but tech is just experiencing it at a higher rate. But a lot of that is because it also grew exponentially a little earlier than it probably should have. So there was a lot of overconfidence, a lot of overhiring when tech was booming. So it is expected that tech is going to level out. So I work with women in tech, college women in tech every day, and they all tell me the exact same thing. They're absolutely terrified to be going into tech. And I tell them, do it scared. Do it scared. Because once you're in, it is a lot easier to move around and negotiate your social capital than if you say, I'm not even going to try because I'm too afraid of it. And then you end up going into something you're not interested in at all just because you feel more secure in it. I also want to mention that something that's really unique about tech is that we're learning that tech is currently the most generational and age diverse industry that exists. That is very important to know, because what that means is that you in the technical industry, you're very likely to find anywhere from 4 to possibly 5 different generations at work in the same place. You have Gen Z, very, very are digital natives who are very dialed in to the social media and design aspects of technology, the AI, the machine learning, the LM. But then you also have this huge demographic of baby boomers who have been building technology as software engineers for so many years. So the age diversity is so critical to building the technology of the future. So that's a huge sell for students. That's a huge sell. We want more and more people to come into tech, especially women. And what I often will say is you can have a community within tech of women because there are a lot of career changers. There are a lot of career changers. I'll talk about why it is a big field for career changing. So that's what we're learning. And then not most importantly, but every company is a tech company. So when you talk to college students, actually, let me take it back to my son. I have a 14-year-old son. He's in ninth grade. Right now, he thinks that there is one possible realistic occupation, and that is going to the MBA. Listen, if he goes to the MBA, I will be ecstatic. However, the fact that his only aspirational goal is the MBA is not reflective of his lack of exposure to careers. It's reflective of what has been fed to him as being the premier job, and that is being a professional athlete. So, why I like to say every company is a tech company is because when I work with college women, When I say, where do you want to work? What is your dream tech position? They tell me Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Microsoft, and Google. Because to them, those companies represent the pinnacle of technology. So, like to my 14-year-old, being a professional athlete is the only possible doorway to success at his thought process right now. That is the way many of our students think. And it is on us, the onus is on us. It's our job to reinforce that every company is a tech company. Every single brand that our students engage with on a day-to-day basis is also an employer, and they don't realize that. It is the allure of the NBA, of professional sports. It's the allure of Google, the allure of Microsoft, when in reality, technical roles exist at every single company. So one of the best learnings that we can take away from this and invest in the students is helping them to know that every company is a tech company. And very often women are going to have a far more inclusive and empowering experience at not someone on the list that I just named, not one of those five, than if they go somewhere else, a startup, or go into education, ed tech. There's so many other things that they can do, but because they're focused on these five, they don't even often realize that women in those environments often tend to have the least satisfactory experiences. So what else do we know, or what else are we learning? Lack of belonging is the number one reason cited for college women not persisting in their major. I didn't include this slide. I should have. I took it out. But women and men, some people don't know this, women and men enter college as CS majors at an equivalent rate. There is gender parity in students entering college as CS majors. After that first year, the drop off for women persisting in the major is significant. And that has held steady for over 30 years of women dropping off after the first year. The first year, it seems to be the most critical year. There's also a second year drop off, but it's not as drastic as that first year. And what we've learned is that women say it's a lack of belonging. Even if there is gender parity in the classroom, based on what the women tell us, by us, I'm talking about the body of research that exists, but I'm also talking about the 20,000 women that belong to my organization I work for, called Rewriting the Code. They all say the same thing. If you are a woman in a class, even if there are more women in the CS class, the men still take over. They still take up all the space. They still answer all the questions. They call out. They form study groups and deliberately will exclude women. And something they also tell us, the women tell us, there's a lot of cheating. There's a lot of cheating. And these are very broad stereotypes, but this is what our data is telling us. We also know that our women and women in general experience imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is not new to any of us on this call, I'm sure. It's something that comes up a lot from our students, but I encourage our students to push through and past it, because what I have found is imposter syndrome is going to exist if it's going to exist. It's going to be there regardless. So you're either going to have to keep going with imposter syndrome, or you're going to stop with imposter syndrome. So it's a choice that you'll make. And then, of course, implicit bias. Minoritized populations experience implicit bias in a incredibly painful, broad amount of ways, but also as women in science fields. And then a lack of role models, which we talked about statistics about professors and graduate school. Or I don't think I talked about graduate school as much, but just there's a lack of representative role models for women and for racial minority women. So, third, what do we need to know to serve women? What do we need to know to encourage their persistence in computer science, in STEM? Well, we need to know a few things. We need to break technology down to its fundamental core. And I have worked in higher education for over 20 years, and I know that we overcomplicate technology. And technology 20 years ago probably deserved that level of complexity. But the technology of today is actually really, when you really boil it down, it's creativity, innovation, and problem solving. And so, if when we market technology and promote technology to women or women students, these are the three areas that we really should be focusing on. It's a problem solving tool. It's a tool for innovation and creativity. Let's think about the ways that you've already incorporated technology into your daily lives, the way that you've managed to create folders on your phone that make your life much easier. I very often joke with students. I say Pinterest was the ultimate was is the ultimate form of coding and data structures for all of us. And all the students know what Pinterest is. They know how to curate data and put it in certain boxes and places and leverage it for problem solving, whether it's dorm decorations, prom dresses, resume tips. So they're doing these things already. So what we need to do as professionals is take what they're already doing and simplify it and package it into a way that helps them understand that they're capable. Because what we've done is really created like this gray cloud that suggests that you have to be this brilliant mathematician or statistician. You those things are helpful. If you have those skill sets, those things are very helpful. But what we've actually learned over time, and as we've looked at students that have been successful, women students that have been successful in tech, is that they're very good at accessing information. They're great at watching YouTube videos. They're great at finding glitches in code, and those are skills that require creativity and innovation. So a lot of my students will tell me, I'm not great at math. I hate math. I am always trying to find a hack for math. Gen Z is great for finding hacks. And that's what we want. You want innovative problem solvers that can find solutions to problems that require less, I don't want to say less brain power, but definitely less harm. The other thing that we need to do as professionals working with students and recruiting students into technology is remind students that technology doesn't have to stand alone. Technology makes an excellent partner to other majors. So I have advised so many students who are like, oh, I really love computer science, but I just don't think I can do it. It's the imposter syndrome, it's the confidence. What it really is that once I connect that major to something else, then they get their self-esteem and their sense of agency from the other thing, and that trickles over and ends up influencing their success in computer science. So what I often tell students is, well, what else do you like? Is there something else you like? And they may say, well, I like theater, or I like exercise science. Let's go for that. And then let's add technology to it, and let's just see what happens. And then things tend to blossom. So we want to remind students that technology as a major doesn't have to stand alone. And it's not that we're trying to grant them 6 years in undergrad, but just figure out ways to make it work for them to where they feel confident about it. Because a lot of times it's just that first level of confidence that creates the barrier. And granted, that confidence is impacted by the systemic things, but if we can get them to really love a co-major or perhaps a minor that they're also studying with the major and get them excited, that can help. And we don't do that enough. We very often, if they say, no, I want to be a computer scientist, then we focus all of our effort on that computer scientist lens. And then what can happen, there's some research that says what can happen with women, especially, is that their identity ends up being connected to that major. So all of the failures and frustrations they experience, they internalize it as being personal. So if they're going to do that, if we know that women students are going to attach their identity to something, we need to also give them something that they like and that they're really strong at. So maybe that is a minor in dance. I have a student, her, and you'll love this. Her name is Miracle. That is her real name. I just love her to death. And she wanted to quit the computer science major so many times, and I would not let her. And I know I'm a student development professional, and sometimes we just want to let the students come to their own decisions, but I knew she could do it. And so I would keep saying to her, what is it that you really love? Well, she loved exercise. She loved fitness. She loved Pilates. And what we ended up doing is attaching a second major in exercise science. And she never even thought of that as a major because she was pretty focused on becoming a software engineer. She just didn't have the confidence. What ended up happening is she was able to create a tool that it's similar to like an Apple Watch, but it's more of a coding program that very specifically related to Black and Brown health conditions. So in terms of getting like your heart rate up, like what does that look like for a Black woman versus a white woman? And blood pressure, what does that look like for blood? And she would use that, she would use her coding skills, but really got to focus on the fitness aspect. That is what did it for her. She would say, yeah, I want to be a software engineer. Yeah. But look at this product. And that's what she was most excited about. And that was a little piece of confidence that she needed. So, and then we also know, or we're learning, we know this, but we're also learning the importance of mentorship. And honestly, I think that I said before that we tend to overcomplicate tech. I think that we overcomplicate mentorship as well. Mentorship can be very short term. It can be long term, but short term membership, the research outcomes show that short term mentorship can be more effective than the expectation of a long term mentor. You're also more likely to get mentors to sign up if they know it's for a finite period. So investing in mentorship programs is great. And then lastly, before we talk about, I know I'm running over, before we talk about what we're going to do with it all, I want to mention opportunities in tech that we should share with our students more readily. Reminding our students about boot camps. Reminding our students about boot camps. Gen Z in particular loves pre-packaged anything. That as a generation, they're very a la carte. So they may be interested in doing a Jira boot camp or a C++ boot camp more so than a semester long course. So they may take the semester long course because they have to, it's part of the curriculum. And maybe they don't do so great in it, but they love that they did a 6-week boot camp. So they still have that skill set. So let's encourage that supplementary learning. We also want to remind students that there are so many free learning opportunities out there through Coursera and Udemy and all the MOOCs that exist in computer science. As a higher education professional, I know that we culturally have often felt that we want to be everything to the student. We want them to get their community from us, their sense of belonging from us, their education from us, and we get nervous sometimes if the student goes outside of that. But that is an us problem. Our students want to be globally connected and globally minded. That's what this generation wants. So encouraging them to go outside of what we are offering on our campuses is going to be critical in retaining and recruiting college women. And then finally, and then we'll chat, what can we do about all these things that we know? What do we do about it? Well, first off, it is so critical to learn who our students are. Because often what we do in higher education is lump our students into two categories. It might be gender, and then it might be race. And those two categories give us a lot of data, and that's wonderful. But let's double tap in what is behind those identities, because nothing is more important than intersectionality. So do we have students that are caregivers? Do we have students that are part-time, career changers, international, first gen? Double tapping on just the race, just the gender, and seeing what else is there will help to retain our students. It will also help to recruit them. Because if I see a program that is just for women in tech, like if my university, my SUNY campus says, I've got a program for women in tech. Well, if my issue is not so much that I'm a woman, if my more salient concern is that I'm first gen And so I don't feel like I'm going to fit in. The language and the modeling of that needs to be reflected. So maybe it's women in tech program, first gen breakout session, international student breakout session, LGBTQ breakout session. Show me how I'm going to fit in to a program that still feels a little I would say an identity or a program that I don't feel I identify with. Yes, I may be a tech major, but I may not culturally feel a part of that. But if you give me something that I feel a part of, then you get the best of both worlds. Um, Definitely form interdisciplinary communities. What I mean by that is you may have an organization on campus that is for women in business, and then another one that's for women in chemistry. Take those two organizations, women in tech, and then do a joint program. What can the women in business offer the women in computer science? What can the women in theater offer women in computer science, and vice versa? Because the belonging piece is what matters. Not always that it's specific to the major, but that they have found a community of belonging. That's the big piece that we want to tap on. I talked about mentorship already, and then amplifying campus representation of students. That is so huge. And one demographic that often feels left out of campus amplification are socioeconomically insecure women and age diverse women, generationally diverse women, and then also women with disabilities. So those three groups often feel that what they have to offer the campus community is not amplified. It's not celebrated. Instead, what feels like is celebrated is the student that's the president of three clubs, that has a 4.0 GPA, that already has 5 scholarships, and that student deserves to be celebrated as well. But if I'm not that student, where do I find that my campus is still proud of me? So we often, as a campus and as a department, tend to celebrate those that are already celebrated. They already have all the privileges, and that's okay. Like let's celebrate everyone, or celebrate those things. But what we also want to do is think about groups and identities that perhaps are more likely to be overlooked. There's I think it's Forbes that does, like, every year does a 30 under 30. And it's like this big celebration of game changers for people that are under 30 years old. That's wonderful. One of the a thought leader that I follow, she's posted one day back when Twitter was Twitter. She posted 30 under 30 is great. Show me 50 over 50. Show me the woman that, and these are some stereotypes here that I'm going to go with, some generalizations, but this was the post. Show me the woman that has had to raise children. Show me the woman that has potentially gone through a divorce. Show me the woman that got a terminal degree after raising children. Show me the 50 over 50, the people that after the workplace and society has wrote them off, they're the ones that are still killing it. And that's important. That's important. And does that take away anything from 30 under 30? Absolutely not. But what it does is it showcases that at any identity level, at any achievement level, that there's value and there's worth, and that your university supports you. And then finally, I'm always going to blow the trombone for this one. And institutions, and I know it's harder for some than others, but make financial investments. You just have to do it. You have to make financial investments in students, in women's programming, whether that is a conference that you're willing to sponsor students to attend. There's hackathons, there's events, investing in the mentorship program, investing in external opportunities, like something that my organization does is we offer our students 1 year of LinkedIn Premium. That's a financial investment, but it's something that helps the women feel seen, celebrated, and gives them a sense of belonging, because they feel like, oh, I get this, I get to level up. And this organization is investing in me, and I'm leveling up from this small thing. So that's my, let me go, I made my little note of it. That's my, what do we know? What do we already know? What are we still learning about? What do we still need to know? And then what we're going to do about it. And I'd love to stop sharing and then just go into some discussion, even getting into some really, really tactical strategies. I would love to hear what you all are doing now and what you'd like to stop, start, continue, pause, anything like that. Let me make it big on my screen. Okay, now I can
Thank you
see
so
everyone.
much, Dr. Austin. That has been fabulous. I think you gave us so many nuggets and wisdom
Oh,
that can help really our program officers here structure recruitment, think about retention and what it takes to make women and other minoritized groups persist.
yeah.
That confidence, self-efficacy, seeing identity building, building their own identity. I want
Mhm.
to go back and I want to open it up to all of you. It's a small group, but just a reminder that we are recording and the recording will sit on our website, for all your colleagues who couldn't join us in time today to listen to it. I want to go back to while people are forming their thoughts and
Sure, sure.
statements and questions. I want to ask a question in the meantime about a very interesting notion that you said that we heard also from others is that connection that you
Mm,
make between um, making the information relevant, the
mm,
exercises that they're doing relevant to their lives. So
mhm.
this woman who was building a technology piece that is connected to African American
Yeah.
groups conditions, it's that idea of social purpose.
Yes,
Is that,
yes,
changing the curriculum, changing the exercises, so it becomes not abstract, but really connected to something you care deeply about, your
right.
identity, your the things that you care about, your community, and a lot of women and a lot of minoritized groups, that's what they really care about. And
Yes.
when you look at the abstraction of technology, it's a turnoff sometimes. But if
Mhm.
you can
Right.
make those connections, it becomes extremely, extremely powerful. And
Agree. Especially with this generation.
right,
This
right.
generation of tech for good. What is the social good behind what I'm doing? Yeah, that
Yeah,
relevancy
yeah.
is so important.
So, what do you advise, Dr. Austin, faculty members who are looking at their courses, their syllabi and syllabus, and really thinking about how do I make this more engaging? How do I make people really feel that this is relevant to their lives, that this solves problems that they care about? It's not about elitist,
Right.
exercises, but it really can be applied to
Yeah.
social problems and social issues that they care deeply about. What do you advise them
Yeah.
on how to reform their curriculum? How to
Oh, absolutely. So I have two suggestions there. One, I always like to start with the students. I really believe strongly in the brilliance and the magic of students. I don't have the pessimistic view that society often holds of college students as being irresponsible, entitled, etc. I actually believe that they have a lot to offer and that they know what they may not know what they need, but they know what they want. So what I think that we can do as educators and administrators is take what we know they need and really dial into what they want, and then the two of us work together. Like I mentioned I have a 14-year-old, but also have younger children. And what do they want? They want food. They want to eat. What do I know they need? I know they need vegetables. So how we work together on that might be, okay, well, we'll sprinkle some cheese on the broccoli. But if I'm the only one that's handing them broccoli, and I'm saying that I'm the authority and I know everything that we're going to do is based on what you need. What you want doesn't matter. They're not going to buy into that. My children are not going to buy into that. So, actually tapping into the students on your campus and saying, do we have a curriculum committee? Is that curriculum committee only faculty? What would it look like to invite a scholar, a student scholar or two to the curriculum committee to provide feedback. And I know that that can be like really territorial, but these are our constituents. And in every other industry, the decision makers actually engage with the stakeholders. You know, marketing people are sending me surveys to find out, what do I want? What do I want to buy? What am I more likely to shop at Target? And in education, there's a very elitist and very territorial air of, I know, because I know what they need, I'm less interested in what they want. So my first suggestion would be to involve the students more and to appreciate and amplify their genius. My second suggestion would be to, at the end of each semester, when you do the evaluations, make sure that the questions on the evaluations aren't just quantitative. You know, did your learning go from here to here? You know, how much more do you know about C, whatever, Java, coding, all the things? But instead, which project made you, or was there a project that helped you feel a sense of belonging in your major? What experience on the syllabus, if any, reinforced that you're in the right major? Like, I think that we need to produce a more qualitative form of assessment at the end of our classes as well, so that we can get feedback from students that's actually actionable when we're redesigning the course. Because because we know that Gen Z is spending so much time learning externally, they're doing all the YouTubes, they're doing the MOOCs, they're doing the external courses. Sometimes it's not that it's our class that led to those learning outcomes. It's what they did parallel to our class. And that's great, wonderful. But what we're not then getting at is, what project hit that sense of belonging, or was there an experience that XYZ?
Right. Awesome. Awesome. Any questions? I want to open it up to all of you. Please unmute yourself and talk. Start talking. It would be fabulous if you open the camera and we can see your faces.
I'm a professor, so I'm used to the talking to initials
Yeah,
and
it's
avatar.
the COVID form.
Yes, so used to it.
But I'd love to see faces.
Yeah,
I can connect more on that level.
yes.
Allison, go ahead.
Everyone.
Introduce yourself, please.
I am Allison. I'm an admissions advisor at SUNY Schenectady. For those of you who don't know, SUNY Schenectady is a open enrollment SUNY community college. So we have lots of students out of high school and then lots of adult students. And I was wondering if you had any advice for having conversations with adult women who don't think they can enter the tech field because they think they're too old.
Yes, 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 yes. I mean, depending on how real you want to be with them. And when I talk to adult learners, I always say, you're the youngest you'll ever be right now. Right now in this moment, you're the youngest you'll ever be. So if that's your reason for having a fear or a block for moving forward with your career, tomorrow it's going to be worse. So let's focus on today, being the youngest that you are right in this moment. Then what I like to do is tap into their social capital and talk about the technology that they're already using and the things that they've already learned to use. I just last night, actually, this is really random, but I was at my women's ministry. We meet weekly at church on Wednesday nights, and we had a potluck last night, and we got into a conversation about pressure cookers and how, like, they can be really dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, but the modern ones have so many buttons, and if you can figure it out, your life is going to be amazing. So that is an example that, like, I absorbed that talking to my fellow women, of older women, and I said, well, I can use that to help women understand how they can do technology. Like, they know how to figure things out because they've had to do so without technology. So now that you already know how to get from point A to point B without a GPS, that was way harder than now using the GPS. So you can do this. It's a matter of reframing and demystifying. It's kind of like what I said earlier. Take all the technical language out of it. Break it down to problem solving, creativity, and innovation. And I joke with other moms that are my age about how we've had to learn 15 different platforms for our elementary school kids. They're uploading this, uploading that. So we do these things when we're put in a situation where we have to. So that's the same skill set that adult learners will apply in the classroom. Once you're put in a situation where you have to do these things, they'll learn it because they've already had to go without it. So it's like a confidence thing. Got to boost their confidence.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Good. I'm glad.
Thank you, Allison and Dr. Austin. Anybody else? So I'll interject a question here, Dr. Austin. So you talked about the gatekeeping that happens.
Yes.
And this is something that I really struggle with, being part of a higher education where, I'm always hearing merit, merit, merit. And we know that the system is not level.
Correct.
And the opportunity structures there are not equal or equitable. So
Mhm.
part of equity is really to try to make that level playing field. And
Yeah.
so you talked about GPAs and the performance gap, and you talked about the first year being the
Yeah.
most critical, and how a lot of weeding out happened in the
A
first
lot.
year. And so what tips do you have for admission officers like Els and others who are really looking at the potential of these students
Right.
and seeing that potential, really, that what the literature talks about, the leaky pipeline,
Leaky
seeing
pipeline.
women and racialized individuals just leak out of the pipeline.
Mhm.
What do you do
Yes.
to prevent that?
So I actually have three answers to that. I'll start with the admissions piece. What I would recommend for admissions professionals to do when they are evaluating candidates for admission is to not only look at GPA as the indicator for academic potential, but also not to ignore it. So, what I encourage enrollment professionals to do is ask students to demonstrate their learning in ways that aren't necessarily academic. So, say a student doesn't have the highest academic performance in I don't know, maybe in a writing class or something like that. But they work two part-time jobs. So what I would encourage enrollment professionals to do is say, tell me about your interactions, your interpersonal skills at your part-time job. Tell me how you demonstrate those skills. Tell me how you use those skills to best serve customers and to be retained as an employee. Because the school, the academic environment is not the only place that students are demonstrating their skill set.
Right.
School is probably one of the harder places to demonstrate their skill set because there's so much competition. But when we have students that are applying to college that work sometimes sadly almost 30 hours a week at Target or a gas station, and they're managers. So you're telling me that a student that gets a C in civics but is literally running a shift at a retail establishment or a hospitality, there is value there. But what that looks like is just changing the way that we evaluate capital and really offering students and inviting students the opportunity to say, the grades are one thing, but let me tell you how long I have been working at XYZ. Or I'm a caretaker for 4 younger siblings. Let me tell you about how I manage my time to make sure that my 4 siblings make it to 3 different schools and maybe even a couple activities, and I still make it to school. Or I am a personal caregiver with a disability. Let me tell you how I have learned how to manage my type 1 diabetes, create meal plans based on a very limited income. That level of capital that admissions applications don't ask for, but that we know exists is really important. And my suggestion on the admission or on the academic side is similar. Allowing students to demonstrate their mastery of content in ways other than testing is so critical. So
Exactly.
technical projects, hackathons, case study competitions, case study experiences, those are ways that you can identify and demonstrate your learning, but it's not necessarily an assessment.
Yeah.
And in the workplace, very often we're going to have opportunities to reiterate our work. So we do something and it doesn't quite work out. That doesn't mean that you failed. You normally have an opportunity to recalibrate, but
Exactly.
the academic experience doesn't mirror that. You have one way to demonstrate your learning and one way only, and that's not replicative of the workplace. So I know with my syllabus, each semester, I always give an assignment that they can opt out of. And so there are a total number of assignments in general, but the grading is based on, depending on the semester, 4 of the 6 or 5 of the 7, so that students have some agency and choice over, I know this is a strength of mine. I know I'm great at research, or I know I'm great at presenting. So I'm going to choose the projects that allow me to demonstrate my strengths versus being forced to do something that I know I'm not going to do as well on, only because it's not my strength, not because it doesn't, not because it reflects my skills. So,
Well, thank you for being at the forefront of this because, yeah, we're still very much rooted in
yeah.
traditional thinking and traditional educational paradigm. And, that is so refreshing and so innovative. Priscilla, you're up.
Hello. Hi, Dr. Kristen. Hi, everyone. So thank you for having this talk. This is very personal to me because I do have daughters in STEM, but I also work at a university where prior to working at the university, I was a mentor. And so I'm still a mentor for many students. And one of the things, and I know you gave some good examples of things that we can do. But I will say one of the things that I'm seeing at a university level is students, particularly Black women and Black men too, but Black women will they'll come into their classes, and this is STEM majors,
Yeah.
I'm talking neuroscience, engineering. They'll come into, and there's this cohort, and they feel excited. It's a group of them, freshman class, and they're not, they might be one of very few minorities, but they might not be the only one. And each semester it gets smaller, and then they sometimes feel like they're being encouraged to look into a different major.
Oh, encourage.
A young lady told me that she was it was suggested to her that she take history, maybe major in history. And it becomes very frustrating for them because not only are they feel like they're being discouraged sometimes from people all around them, but also because the cohort gets smaller and they're already a minority at that university, and now they're the only one, and it's like established groups already. So I guess my question would be, what can the university and even the professors, I get that professors think, oh, these are young adults, they work it out themselves, but I just wonder if there's more that can be done with trying to make everyone feel that they're in this together and can benefit from each other, and be keeping that, not letting it be one of these things where only the strong survive, but trying to keep everyone alive. So that's one of the questions I have, and I'm gonna have another one later.
Yeah, you're so right. It's just like the higher up you go in the major, the smaller the pool is for all the reasons that we've mentioned, right? And with no intention of making this presentation specific to rewriting the code, the organization that I work for, the answer to your question is so relevant to where I work. So rewriting the code is a national not-for-profit organization that serves college women in tech. And the reason that we serve college women in tech is because of what you just described. We know that the number shrinks and shrinks and shrinks the higher you go as it relates to the campus. So what we do is aggregate all of the women that are regionally in that area and provide community that way. Because the research shows that you don't actually have to have belonging and support on your campus in order to retain. You need to have belonging and support and community in general. It's the isolation and the loneliness is the issue. So for those students that you were referring to, connecting them with external community is so impactful, so that even when they go into class and they feel or are the only one, they know that when they leave class, there's still a community that they can tap into. There, and for us, for RTC, Rewriting the Code, our community exists online, which makes it super easy to engage. But there are communities that are around. So I know, Villanova could tap into the greater Philadelphia tech community or the mainline tech community. Like, there are so many ways that we can connect students with belonging that don't have to be right on our campus. Because you're not going to, you're not, but you're less likely to change the quantity of enrollment. So you want to change the quality of the enrollment experience that the students that you do have are having. So it's also a reverse way to look at retention. Instead of looking at why students are leaving, look at the ones that stayed and ask why. And so when they stay, they'll say, oh, because I was a member of this professional organization. I was in NSBE, or I was in, this or that. And I had a mentor and I had role models, and none of that would be on campus. It's
Right.
the greater connection that will help. It'll help.
That actually is a good point, because I'm thinking about how many students come from all over the country and have no clue what's local. So maybe, maybe suggesting that there are resources listed on the paperwork that they get during orientation.
During admissions, like even saying, I think that we're afraid, and I worked in admissions forever, so I get it. But I think, like, Allison could probably understand this. I think we're afraid to talk about the lack of diversity on our campuses when we're talking to a student that is underrepresented, because we're afraid it's going to turn them off. I want to be honest and say underrepresented students know they're underrepresented. Like, we don't have to pretend like they don't know that. You're either going to an HBCU or an HSI or you're not. So we don't have to pretend that lack of racial diversity is not a thing. So knowing that, what can we give them in the admissions and enrollment process to say, you know what? We don't have a large racial diversity on our campus, but these are the organizations that open up the walls of the university that we're going to connect you with. That goes way further than trying to pretend that we have a ton of Black and brown students based on a website. Like and again, especially with Gen Z, they see right through that stuff. They're like, yeah, right. You put your 3 athletes on here and you're calling it a minority program.
And then I guess the other question I would have is, and I don't know if this is something that can be answered here, but I just wonder about more of the community outreach programs. My daughters have been very lucky to have had access to programs at universities when they were quite young, which is great, because if you hate engineering or hate STEM, I'd much rather you know that you hate it while you're still in high school.
Right, not paying.
So, and that makes me think, like, maybe if we could find more of these programs that start young. I love that, for example, Purdue, they have it for middle school. My daughter went to Purdue as a middle schooler. Villanova has it for more so for high schoolers, but I'm just wondering what we can do just as a community to get more of these programs. I really think they should start in middle school.
They should absolutely start in middle school.
Don't wait to high school.
By the time they get to high school, they're juggling too many identities to know which one feels the best. And so in middle school, you're so open. You're like, I'll do anything. I've tried 15 sports. But in high school, you're so pressured by all the identities that surround you, the popularity, the peer pressures, that it's a lot harder to get students to try that new thing. Like, and whether that's vo-tech, engineering, theater. It's harder to get them to try it. So I agree with the middle school intervention level. And then B, that falls into gatekeeping. And these programs exist. It's just that they're very carefully advertised in terms of who gets access to these middle school, high school bridge programs. You think about students that are in very under-resourced areas or low-income areas and areas where there's not a degree-holding person in the household. Who is sending them information about an event at Purdue? Who's sending that to them? No one is, because that's not who Purdue is most likely trying to cultivate a relationship with. And nothing that these universities do, Villanova, Harvard, Penn State, nothing that a university does is not recruitment centered. They hope that you come and do the Penn State program and you have so much fun as a 7th grader that memory sticks in your head and you eventually apply there. So you can tell a lot about a school and their priorities based on where they market and advertise those entry programs. Carnegie Mellon has an amazing bridge program for middle and high school students, and it actually only advertises to the lower income public schools. That's the only place it advertises. And the opportunities that exist with the program are incredible. Now, can anyone participate in it? Yes, they can. But they advertise it to the low income public schools so that those students get the most access and availability. But a student from a more affluent area, a more resource area can also participate. They're just not advertising there. So there's something there on the systemic.
And even with that, I would sometimes I will see programs that are targeted towards that demographic where lower underrepresented, lower income, but you will find that, like you said, everyone else seems to find out, and it's it's while it's targeted, that might not mean that's the majority. So I have noticed that as well. So it's and again, I guess my question wasn't a question. It's just one of those things that
like an observation,
observation for sure. So I just hope that even like as we talk about it and more people understand that these are what's out there, that if there's any way that one can make a difference, that that they seek to do that, because it's I definitely see that. While I was talking to a dean of a business school, and she's like, everyone's going into STEM, but the outputs, like you said, like there's still such a great
disconnect.
Yeah, it's still so few of women, and then you break it down by race, like even fewer. So yes, I get it. Everyone's going into STEM, but how are we keeping them into STEM?
Yeah, and who is that everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great conversation. I think one of the models that I saw really work is a partnership between, the community-based organization like Girls Inc. and the university. We have such partnership, called the Eureka program, where girls from Girls Inc. Really come to Albany and have a retreat and
love it.
STEM. And I think these community partnerships are very important, which makes
They
sure
are.
that, the population gets in. I want to follow up on Priscilla's comments, and Dr. Austin, your response to her of, I love the idea of really creating community beyond the walls of the university, so that women feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Are there ways that you can build community for women within the college? Do you believe in the model of the student organization, or is just like really not a very effective model?
Yeah, so that's such a good question. And you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Social connection is always I shouldn't say always, right? As a researcher, we never want to use absolutes. Social connection is ubiquitously impactful. But when it comes to women in computer science, because they perceive the competition being so fierce, it they often feel a sense of competitiveness with the only person that could be their peer.
Right.
It's like there's 10 of us here at the whole school, and Google is coming.
Yeah.
Do you think Google's going to take all 10 of us? No. So now I have now turned into, I'm now Dina's competition. And Robin and I were friends, and Priscilla and I were doing a cookie event last night, but Google's coming tomorrow, and suddenly I have to say why I'm better than them, and they're my friends. So socially, yes, we want students, all students, but we want women to have events and activities that are just liberatory. School's hard. So we just want them to be able to come and eat pizza and watch Survivor. Like, yes.
Without the toxic competition.
Without that. And so that's why it's so important to broaden, because suddenly if you're a part of this regional community of women in tech, you don't feel it's not as personal.
Yeah.
And one of my students I talk to very often, they're both in rewriting the code, and they're roommates, and they say, like, we'll both get an email from rewriting the code at this exact same time, and then we're looking at each other like, which one of us is it going to be? And they're roommates, and is life competitive? Yes, but it's different when you're not face to face with your competition every single day.
It's really toxic. It's very toxic. Yeah. And women
and unhealthy.
Really unhealthy. Yeah. So my other question is, as faculty try to deal with what you talked about, Dr. Austin, within the climate of the classroom, males dominating and taking over, and the form of study groups that exclude women.
Yes.
What is the responsibility of a faculty member in that classroom to make sure that these dynamics don't evolve?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's a couple like kind of quick wins that faculty can do. And that one of them is so basic, and it's like literally calling on women. Like calling on women to answer questions. There's so much research. So much research says that white males are more likely to be called on to answer questions in class. It doesn't matter the discipline, but literally calling on women, seeking the women in the class out to say, I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Because what that does is it says, I see you. Oh my goodness, I have been seen. I didn't shrink into this pool of men or maleness. So just saying, like, I see you and tell me about what you are interested in. Also, when faculty have research projects or grants, actually seeking out women students to work with them, because a lot of women won't raise their hand for an opportunity because they assume that they're not going to be picked because of their lived experience or biases, stereotypes. So they won't even raise their hand even though they're interested. So instead of relying on the students, just actually going straight to them and say, hey, I'm picking you for this. Can you do this with me? I want you to do this with me. So it really involves a lot of relationship work. And depending on the scale of the course, you can do more or less of this. But I think if it's done well early on, you build that relationship with the students early on, and then they can carry that with it. It's like you create a bank that they can withdraw from when their balance gets low, right? So yeah, those are three like really just easy things you can go with. On a broader level, it's being more inclusive with your instructional materials, making sure that you're centering women researchers. They just had a huge thing that took over my entire LinkedIn, where this conference used avatars as women in AI that said they were presenting at a conference. Why would you need avatars when there are women that actually exist that can be presenters at the conference? So like even stuff like that, like raising those very relevant and timely topics in the classroom for discussion and helping women know like, oh, I can actually be seen here and I can voice this concern or that concern, creating that space.
Wow. Yes, that's awesome, Dr. Austin. Any other questions for Dr. Austin? What a resource you are. I mean, you are the example of what happens when you have this ally, this champion of students, working with them, providing that confidence, that self-efficacy. Students need that. They
They
need to
need that.
hear that.
Mhm. They need
And
it.
when they don't, with all the other negative forces around them, it
Yeah.
just like creates a vicious cycle.
Oh goodness.
Yeah,
It's self-fulfilling.
yeah,
They hear one bad thing and then they will find five other things to confirm the bad thing that they heard.
exactly.
So instead, if we can give them good things to hear, they
Right,
will find other things to confirm that.
right, right. Any questions for Dr. Austin? I know we are running out of time. Perhaps we can take one more question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Don't be shy.
I'm gonna also, I think, drop my LinkedIn
Awesome.
so that
Awesome.
folks can connect. See.
So if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank Dr. Kristen
Yeah.
Austin again for a wonderful, incredibly enriching conversation and great program for sure. Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, Maria. A lot of praise for the materials you share, Dr. Austin.
Oh,
We
good.
are thankful for your time, thankful for all the nuggets, the pearls of wisdom you shared. Breaking technology into its fundamental core is really important. Packaging all it.
Mm,
Uh, and and making sure that they see themselves as actors in this field is
yeah.
very important, and figuring out ways to make it work for them. Identity building,
Hmm.
confidence, self-efficacy, the boot camps, the events, the free learning opportunities, and knowing your students. That is,
Knowing your
again,
student.
a very important lesson that we learned here. Looking at intersectionality, what their needs are, the reality of their lives, creating committees to coordinate and work with students, amplifying and celebrating representations, partnerships, and financial commitment. That is
Huge.
incredibly important. We can just talk the talk, but
Oh,
don't walk the walk until you put money behind
yeah.
any effort. Nothing gets done without really this team of funding behind it.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for being here with us. And again, Dr. Austin, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Hope everybody have a wonderful holiday break. And please stay tuned for this webinar being uploaded to the NET website, www.netprogram.org,
Yay.
where you can invite your colleagues who couldn't be with us today to listen to the wonderful presentation by Dr. Austin. Thank you again. Hope
Thank
everybody have
you.
a wonderful
Thank
rest.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.